Alright, so this is the first update for my next game, which I'm dubbing Inner Demons for now. It's a game about grief and depression. So with that upbeat note, let's get right into it. This is just what I have so far. If I hit play, you'll see a very basic main menu. You have play, settings, and quit. Quit doesn't do anything in the editor, but if you were running the build itself, it would quit the application. Settings just opens up volume with a slider. I don't have any noise or sound in the game right now, so that doesn't work. But if you hit play, you load in as this character, and you just have some very basic movement. There are no animations yet, so the like movement and walking and jumping looks a little janky. That'll be added in soon. But yeah, this is what we have so far. If you dodge the hitbox that I have set up here, obviously the player just falls forever, which is, not ideal. So I'll just go through my setup so far. So I have this main menu scene that has the main camera just centered on the screen. I didn't really touch that. I have this UI game object, and that just has this main menu UI script on it, and that handles all of the button interactions. I also have this canvas object that has two different panels. It has the main menu panel that has this Inner Demons text. It has this play button, the settings button, and the quit button, and all of these are on click mapped to the UI game object script that I have here. When you do hit the settings button, this panel disappears entirely, and this one reappears. So that's I'm just activating and deactivating them by using set active. Nice and simple. When you do hit the play button, you just load the next scene, which in this case is the World 1, which is all about denial, which is the first stage of grief. So if we swap over to this scene, this is of course where we start off, and our player drops down to this hitbox that I have. Is very temporary hitbox, just so that the player collides with the ground at least. I do have this grid here, which is technically the what is it called? Tile map. I have this grid here, which is the tile map. I do have the front ground layer, which is in front of the player, the player layer, which is everything that the player should be colliding with, and the background layer, which is for added effects and objects the player won't necessarily be colliding with. I only have one tile palette. Well, I have two tile palettes set up, but they're both based from this free asset pack that I found on itch. It just has varying different objects that I can place within the scene and use to create the level as I want. The other one is just decorations. These are things that might, for now, are intended to go in the front ground or background, but might require, I might have the player interact with these later on, especially something like these vines, where, if the player walks into them, they'll, take damage or reset or something like that. And then, of course, I have the player itself, which is what you control. Right now, the only thing that really does anything is the box collider, the rigid body 2D, and the player controller script. So the player controller script just keeps track of a couple of variables right now. So right now, it keeps track of the rigid body, which is what we use to do the player movement. We have the speed, which is the speed that the player moves at. I actually want this to be a little bit higher, so we're going to change that to 5. We have the jumping power, which is how high the player should be jumping. These numbers are very arbitrary. You can increase them or decrease them as you see fit. Private, bool, horizontal. So this keeps track of if the user is hitting the left or right button. If the player hits left button, this is negative 1 to indicate that the player should be going left. If it's 1, it indicates that the user should be going right. 0, of course, is not moving left or right. I do have this bool called is jumping to determine if the player is jumping or not. It is initially set to false because the player doesn't start jumping right at the beginning of the game. And I also have the second bool called is facing right, which is also set to true because when you load in here, the player is facing to the right. This keeps track of which direction the player is facing and when we need to swap the sprite. Or well, flip the sprite. So here I'm just setting the rigid body. Here we're setting the horizontal input, which is done by using getAxisRaw. And then this handles the jumping and movement. I could go into more detail, but it's very, very basic. So it's really nothing special right now. But yeah, that's it. I'm gonna delete this ground check because I don't need that anymore. That was something I was testing. But I do have notice that I have the main camera nested under the player object, and that's because I want the camera to follow the player. But yeah, that's it for the first update. Just a very basic level, very basic scene, very basic player movement. It's kind of janky still. It still needs some refinement, but for now, this is just what I have. Next steps are to create this level that I want the player to go through, add hitboxes to the next steps are to add the hitboxes to this part. I don't know. The parts that the player are going to collide with, so that way I don't need to, create these squares here and all the way along there. That's just how it is. So there's no extra needed work for me there. And then, yeah, I can go on to making the whole level and hooking up some sound and as well as the animations for the player. So you'll also notice that I have the animation and audio source here. Those are completely unused right now. Those will be added in later on. But yeah, I hope you guys stay tuned for my creation of Inner Demons.